This podcast is presented by Castrol Edge Euro, the #1 brand recommended by technicians in Europe. Did you know that almost 50% of European vehicles in Canada come factory filled with Edge Euro? Offer better oil. Offer your customer Castrol Edge Euro. Questions? Contact your local auto parts distributor, Wakefield Territory Sales Manager, or customer service at 1-800-268-5339. Now, we're recording this in kind of early June, so I'm sure everybody with kids is looking forward to getting them out of school. Haha, no, maybe not. But math class is in today. So here with me, I'm your host, Andrew Ross, and here with me is Murray Voth from RPM Training. Welcome to the podcast again, Murray.
Yeah, nice to be here, Andrew.
And those who've been paying attention the last few episodes, we talked very briefly touched on this specific topic when we were speaking about the impact of rising parts prices and how to handle that just from a customer, consumer, and just general business level and what it means. But there's some real math at the root of making sure that you don't kind of find yourself short on that. We call that margin management. As prices go up and hit different thresholds, it can have a really significant impact on how much, not just the percentages, but the actual dollars. As they say, you pay the phone bill with dollars, not with percentages, right? So
yes.
Murray is all set. Now, I will advise folks listening to this on an audio that we are recording this for video because there's going to be a little bit of screen sharing that will be useful. We'll try and go through it to make it very useful. Nobody gets left out of much of it, but you might, after listening to this, go to Indie Garage or jobbernation.ca, both, and check out the YouTube video or our YouTube channels for this. You might have to give it a little bit after the audio goes up live for the video to go up. They say, for circumstances beyond our control, right? Anyway, that's our housekeeping. Okay, math class is in, Murray. How'd I do in introducing the topic?
That was a great topic introduction, Andrew, and that's amazing. So let me just circle back to how the conversation started with you and I a month ago, and then we'll get into where I'm going to share my screen. All right. So when we're working with our clients as coaches, working with our clients, we are working with them to be achieving a 45 to 50% gross profit margin on parts. All right. 50%, of course, is the leading edge of that whole conversation. We've had lots of group members achieve that 45, 46, 47, and quite a few achieved 50. And about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I had lots that were at 50. And then over time, as we began to look at numbers, we began to see it drop to 49, to 48, et cetera. And these were not shops where the service advisors were discounting. This is not shops where advisors were worried about price. They were confident in the product, confident in their technicians. So something was happening in the background systemically that was causing the margin percentage to actually drop. And so we looked into it and we realized that we had inflation. So we had COVID, and then we had inflation hit on the parts costs. And on top of that, the type of parts that people are selling are different now than they were even 3 years ago or 5 years ago. All right. So on that note, I'm going to always have in my mind that we are an audio audience first rather than a visual audience, but I will share my screen. And we're going to be looking at something called a parts matrix. All right. Now, the philosophy behind a parts matrix is that, say, for example, if a part costs me $2 as a shop, I'm going to work at getting a 75% gross profit margin. Again, we could do a whole session on the difference between markup and margin. We have to make sure that we are on margin. So for those listening, you take your cost and you divide it by the inverse. This was math class, Andrew warned you. You divide it by the inverse of the margin that you want. So you take your $2 part, you divide it by 0.25, which is the opposite, the inverse of 75, right? You add them together, it becomes 100. And you will find out that you're going to be selling that part for $8. All right. Generally, that's not that hard to do on a lower cost price. It is what it is. It's only $8. and we can make 75% of that. All right. Now, let's say, for example, we have a part that costs you $150, and we're going to divide that by 0.5, and basically we're going to double it, and we're going to sell it for 300. All right. Basically, we're going to do that. Now, in this matrix that's on the screen, for those of you that are watching the YouTube video of it, you'll see that I have this the scale of $50 to $149.99 going out at a 50% gross profit margin. Well, what happens as soon as that part that I used to pay $149.99 for goes up to $157? It bumps me into the next bracket of a matrix, and now I'm only making 45% on that part. And that's where the diminishment of the percentage of margin began to appear. Things were dropping into the next margin category. So two things were happening. So we had inflation raising that part from about $150 to $157 or $160 was causing that, but also the type of part we were selling. So, for example, and I'm going to make quite an extreme jump here, Andrew. An expensive alternator in my day at my shop, my cost was $150, right? And we were selling them for $300. Generally, they lasted 3 to 4 years, is my vague memory of it. So a customer in the lifetime of owning a car, 7 to 8 years, would experience 2 to 3 alternators, right, in the period of owning that car. Well, now the cost of an alternator, now I don't know the average cost, but I'm seeing costs of alternators in the $800 and in the $1,200 range as a cost. And now you're not doubling that because you will price yourself right out of the market. Now you're lucky if you're maybe making 30% gross profit or 25% gross profit on that alternator. And the consumer will experience one in the lifetime of a 7 to 10 year ownership of an alternator, because they generally are lasting longer under the right circumstances, right? So then, now the thing is the gross profit dollars are generally, not too bad, even though things have changed. But if this trend goes on too far, we do have to be cautious with this and reducing our margin. We still need that 50% margin to maintain the gross profit dollars to pay our bills and have a net. That piece hasn't changed.
Right.
Go ahead, Andrew.
And in the example you gave earlier of was it a steering rack or whatever it was that we were talking about?
Alternator,
$149 and goes to $157. I mean, okay, not a steering rack, right? But it goes up by $2, and your system, whatever system you have, your shop management system, it doesn't care that it's that you're actually making less money, less dollars. It goes up $1 and suddenly it's 5% less margin. Exactly. You don't need to be, again, an expert mathematician to know that you're actually losing a couple of bucks from what you had before. And a couple of bucks times a couple of bucks, pretty soon, as they say, pretty soon you start talking about real money, right? So
exactly. So the matrix that's on the screen, and I'll describe it for the audio listeners, is anything that's a penny to $2.99, we make a 75% margin. $3 to $9.99, 66%. $10 to $24.99, 60%, $25 to $49.99, 55%, and so on, to the point where we get to $500 cost to $999.99. We're at a 30% margin, and then $1,000 and up is 25%, which means that if you pay a cent more for that part, it drops your margin by 5% in your software, right? Now, there's a couple of brands of software out there that have a setting where you can take what I call the shoulders off. So in other words, it doesn't worry as much if it goes up a penny or 2 or 5. It just rounds it to the next place that makes sense for the software. It's got a built-in algorithm to look after it, right? But that algorithm itself is based on the shoulders you've placed in there, the steps that you've placed in there. And so at a certain point, you will have to revisit the settings in your software. So again, for those of you listening and those of you who are going to be watching this, what we're doing, and I've got a bit of an older one. I've got my 2023 matrix is on the screen. I was quickly looking for the file for my 2024 and I couldn't find it for whatever reason. I have a new laptop and I'm moving files across, and it's chance that my newer files are on the new laptop, but they're not on this meeting.
Let me just make a recommendation here for all those who want to have the updated matrices, I guess,
Yes.
matrices. Murray Voth is available for consultations and coaching,
Yeah.
and all that, because it's not just the matrix. I mean, you need to know how to manage the matrix
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
be the one.
Yeah. But if you want to put in the comments, send me the matrix or email me, murrayvoth@rpmtraining.net. We'll send you a copy of the 2024.
Well,
The 2025 isn't ready yet.
yeah. We'll put that in the show notes for the
Perfect.
episode for sure.
Awesome.
If anybody
Beautiful.
wants to reach out
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
update. But again, the concept is sound though, right? And
Yeah.
this is one of the things that when we were talking about tariff, impacts on parts prices, and of course just general inflation and other costs that you have, and the need to make sure that the parts side of your business, obviously you need to take care of the labor side of your business too, but the parts
Yeah.
side of your business is doing for the business what not just what it needs to do, but like what you expect, because nobody wants the rude
Yes.
surprise and say my business has been great. Why? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why am I not getting the generating the profit I need out of my parts here? And when everything, all the prices seem to be going up and my margins seem to be going down. What the
Yeah.
what?
Exactly.
And this is where some of this can come from, right?
Yeah.
So how do you manage it in a way? Let's just assuming that I don't have an algorithm that works. I mean, what do I look for? Where do I spend my time? Because obviously it can be super time consuming to go through every item here and there and try and get it.
Yeah.
Like on a daily or monthly basis. It sounds almost impossible.
It's not that hard, actually, Andrew. Most of the brands of software out there, like the vast majority of them, have a parts matrix ability like this built in of some sort. You can add layers. Maybe your matrix has too few layers. Maybe it comes with only 4 settings. Maybe you need to have 8 or 9 like mine. If you don't have a software that has a parts matrix that automates this for you, I'm going to recommend that you research a new software program. Because it is the 21st century, and you will pay for that software in a blink and heartbeat by having a matrix. So first of all, they all have it. Secondly, it will be a matter of revisiting it, maybe yearly for sure, maybe every 6 months, or maybe even quarterly to do that. And here I'm going to talk about the hints that we're doing as an example, and then a new idea that one of my group members actually came up with, which is actually amazing. I'm going to share with you guys. So where we're moving with this is, for example, on this lower category here of 75% from a penny to $3, we're raising that to 80. And the next one at 66, we're raising that to 70. So the lower end, we're bumping up. On the higher end, we're actually spreading the categories out, and we're actually accepting a slightly lower percentage on some of the bigger stuff, so we don't price ourselves out of the market, right? There's a place. And so then at the end of the month or the year or the quarter, the blend of the little stuff we sell versus the bigger stuff we sell should still be getting us that 45 to 47 to 50. So it's a matter of just measuring your numbers weekly or even daily to see what your matrix is doing. Now, the other thing is maybe we need to revisit my categories. Maybe the penny to $2.99 needs to go to a penny to $4.99. Right. And then the $4.99 goes up to 12. So then we can sort of work with those pieces to see the number, massage the numbers that we come up with, and experiment that a little bit. Right. And this is a live spreadsheet. So, for example, in this case, for those people watching, I have a $3 to $9.99 segment, 66% margin. My cost is $5. I'm going to sell that for $14.71. Right. So if I get a $9 part, I'm going to sell that for $26.47. All right. And again, people are saying, well, what about suggested list and MSRP? Suggested list and MSRP are all over the map. They're all inconsistent, and they don't have any interest in making you profitable if you follow those MSRPs.
I mean, things like MSRPs and suggested lists have a lot to do with market positioning and some other,
they used to have a place
client and customer concerns and some competitive issues and things like that. This is the real world when you're talking. This is what you're selling them for, and
this is what you put it in the bank.
in the bank, right? And what you need to know when you're the shop owner or whoever is
Hmm.
handling this side of your
Yeah.
pricing is being in touch with your local conditions. Obviously, there's probably some things that you have to do, even though we decry those who sell at prices and somebody showing up with a price for a part on their phone from some online seller. I mean, you need to be aware of it, right?
Well, and
And sometimes there's things you might need to do, as you discussed, having a slightly lower margin on some particular categories of parts that fall into a certain price ranges to say, you know what, this is we're going to do this,
yeah,
uh,
I do. Before I go on to my client's idea, that there is something I want to bring up because you brought up about this price transparency. Like you can go online and you can see it online from this company or that company for this price, or you can actually go into a parts store yourself and buy a part for 20, 30, 40, $50 less than the what you're going to charge them at a shop. And I remind all shop owners, all that pricing is do it yourself pricing. Don't worry about the fact that it's online for half the price of what you sell it for. Well, if the person is going to do the job themselves, then they're free to buy that part. There's nothing stopping them from buying that part and doing that work themselves. That is an online do-it-yourself price. If they want to compare to you as a shop, you have to tell them, oh yeah, I understand you can get it cheaper, but that is the do-it-yourself price, sir. This is the price at a do-it-for-you shop. It comes with an experienced technician doing the installation, along with a 2-year, 40,000-kilometer warranty. It comes with this, it comes with that, it comes with a courtesy car, it comes with a vehicle that's washed and vacuumed. But feel free. If you want to, and if you want to criticize me for my price being higher, then I'm going to respond in the review by saying that is a do-it-yourself price. Because here's the other example, Andrew, is I remind people is you go to a Costco warehouse store or any warehouse store like that, and you will be in line behind somebody with 3 carts, the orange carts, stacked to the brim with eggs and milk and bread. And you know that they are a restaurant.
Yeah.
Right? Do you ever see restaurants picketing Costco because Costco sells eggs at the same price to do it yourself for homeowners who are going to cook the eggs at home? No. So what? Let it go, automotive shop owners.
that's it.
Who
That's it.
cares what it is online, right?
Years and years ago, this is again, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but years and years ago, you remember when we used to have retail malls, and lots of
Yes.
them,
Yes.
and there was a store at I believe it was Yorkdale, if memory serves, called Fabricland. Now, Fabricland was a fabric store, and
Yes.
the other retailers during one of the particularly yes, we've had economic dips before. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert: this is not the first time we've gone through this economic cycle. And many of the other clothing retailers took exception to this ongoing lease with this Fabricland store. And as I was led to understand it, hey, look, if you have other information, you want to send me an email about something that happened 35 years ago, knock yourself out. But my understanding of it was they took exception to Fabricland because they thought it was taking their customers, because people would go in and buy the cloth instead of going into their store and buying the clothing. And the outcome of the conversation is they're not the same customer. They're just not the same customer. Or if they are, people who go make their clothes, sometimes they make something in particular that they want to make, but they
Yeah.
still buy other clothes because they love clothes. They took
Yeah.
away the store and didn't help anybody anything.
No,
As far as the
that's
retailers went, they went
exactly.
to wherever the Fabricland went to. They went to buy fabric somewhere else, and now they're not in the mall.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
anyway,
Less
that's my
traffic for
little
other things. Exactly.
crazy rant. So the do-it-yourself customer is a do-it-yourself customer. They
Yeah.
want to do
Let
it.
it.
It's probably a different vehicle. It's kind of things you probably don't want. You're probably
Yeah.
probably don't want them as your customer in a lot of ways.
We
Being kind. Um, but
we have.
having
Yeah.
said all of that,
Yeah.
uh, what sorry for the segue, everyone. Murray and I do this, apologies, but it is important to have an answer, and an answer that is not,
Yes.
well, why don't you just bring the part in, or or throw a pen across the table and say, like, well, get out of here. Like, you need to have a proper
Well,
answer, and saying that it's the do-it-yourself price doesn't include all these things and you're responsible for it, whereas if you bring your car in here, we are responsible for the repair. We
yeah.
will take care of you. And
Yeah.
there's a cost to that, but in the long run and the short run, it's a better deal for the customer, I think,
Yeah.
is a really compelling one to make. Um,
Yeah.
But what's
We
your
had a
what was your what's your client's idea that sort of
oh,
got on the ramp?
so I I he said, well, the mix of the price point of parts that I sell is going to affect this. So if I have a lot of stuff that's in the $50 range, the $50 to $150 range, I'm going to be making 50% on that stuff all day long. How many of my pieces are in that range versus my pieces in the $1,000 range versus in the $3 range? So he created a spreadsheet. This is his. It's not available to the public yet. But if you're a member of RPM Group, you can have it from him, a little hint. But he actually did a spreadsheet where he entered in all of his parts for his year's purchase and found what percentage of parts in what category were the volume, dollar volume, and items. And he found, in his case, that 50 to 150, he was 25% of his by volume, like by item, was in that price range. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to take that category and make it 55.
Right.
Because what's it going to do? A $50 part, 5 more points. What's it going to be? It's going to be $110 versus $100 like, at the end of the day. And my 500 to 999 at 30, you know what? I'm going to put that to 28 because I don't do that many of them. And I'm not, that way my advisors are a little bit more comfortable with that big expensive thing they have to sell, right? Now, he created this spreadsheet and found his category and then shared it with his peers in his group. Another guy, so he was in Delta, BC. The other fellow's in Maple Ridge. The guy in Maple Ridge found that the 300 to 499, he was 25% of his category. Different kinds of vehicles, different kinds of business, different kinds of things they were doing, right? So now we're getting to a level of complexity where we're going to use, using these tools, create an algorithm. By putting that data in, it will tell you what your matrix needs to be to get the margin that you're looking for. It's an amazing project underway, we're going to use AI to help us create this algorithm. I understand there is one brand of software out there, and I'm not going to use any names just because we're pretty neutral here, that apparently has an algorithm like that built in where you can tell it the rules and let it set it and forget it, and it'll give you your 50 points at the end of the month, and it'll just adjust everything throughout the month as it comes in, and give you that number that you need. All right. Now, I do want to lead off another direction that this is taking. There will be a limit to this. It's very possible that my 50% benchmark that we're aiming for is going to be tougher and tougher to reach in some markets and with certain clientele. For example, fleet and commercial people tend to have their own accounts at parts warehouses and stuff like that for different reasons and have some awareness of parts transparency. So they put pressure on their providers a little bit there as well. So at the end of the day, this margin may need to drift down a little bit, but here's something else. If that goes down, this is like hydraulics. Something else has to go up because your fixed costs did not go down. In fact, inflationary things tell us that your fixed costs are going to go up at whatever inflation rate is going up, right? Your occupancy of the building, the wages of your employees, your hydro is all going to go up. So we cannot afford to play games with this. So our guideline / benchmark for service, which is my term for labor, used to be 70 for years. We have now bumped that with our coaching clients to 75. So that way we still achieve an overall gross profit of 60 on everything we do. So even if the parts, we have one guy that does 80% fleet and commercial work in the prairies, pretty big city, pretty big accounts and stuff. And, they're having some challenges with quality and sourcing and have to do a lot of OE parts and stuff like that, which again have these limitations of MSRP and stuff on them. That's a perception problem. So he's running at a 43% margin, even though my guide is 45 to 50, but he is now focused on his service GP, and he's one of my first clients that's hit 75.
Right. Pay
me now, pay me later. You got to pay me. Right. I'll make the invoice look whatever you want to look. I actually had a good friend who was very confident, a shop owner and on the front counter, and he quoted somebody, $467.22 for whatever all in taxes and everything, and the guy said, so how much is the part, or how much is the service, or how much is this? And Mark said to him, I'll make the invoice look however you like. I can make it 0 labor, 0 service, 0 parts, all taxes. I can make it all parts. It's 467.22, sir. Would you like us to go ahead?
Right.
I can make the invoice look exactly like you want. You want free parts? I got free parts, but it's going to cost you this much later.
460. Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. The number's the number is the number.
It's gravity. You know, if I pick up my coffee cup here and drop it, it's going to fall, right?
Okay.
If I don't have a gross profit dollar, I won't pay my fixed expenses and I won't be in existence. So the idea that the driving public can negotiate is ridiculous. Now, why do they think they can? Because for decades we have allowed them to, because we haven't known how to take a stand and stand for our businesses, and so we have negotiated and given discounts in our business. Right.
I'm going to ask Murray to stop sharing his screen just now so that we can get our big pictures and beautiful faces in front of everybody as I sign off here.
Yeah.
But it is certainly critically important to the ongoing health of your business to pay attention to this stuff. And I can see, certain shop owners, it's going to actually be kind of fun if you can play with it, and see what happens. I'd recommend, I don't know, obviously different systems will have different capabilities to do this with, and some might be easier, but even if you just pull it out on a spreadsheet and just play with it and just do some of your estimates and say, look, if 25% of my stuff is in this range, what happens if I do this? And if it's 50%, and then decide, like, do you think your customers can live with it? And does it put you in a better competitive position on some of the other parts that are maybe, you're constantly having to justify at the front counter because you're, Joe down the street is $10 less than this or $20 less. I mean, are you, I mean, this goes hand in hand, obviously, with charging appropriately for the parts and to begin with, and buying the parts that, at a quality level that you need to deliver to. I mean, an oil filter is not $5, it's
no.
I just paid $35 for an oil filter yesterday. I mean, right? And this is what it is. But for the customer, so when I am being a customer, when I think of $35 as part of the, admittedly $450 oil change, I'm okay with it because the car's is an investment for me, or it's I don't know, I can't really call a car an asset, but as a customer, I understand. I think as customers, if you put yourself in the shoes of the customer and realize it's not the 5s and 10s that they're concerned about. Nobody wants to go to the shop, any shop, and be like, oh, it needs this, it needs that, a bunch of other, suspension work or this and that. But at the end of the day, if you've done your job correctly, they will recognize that the work needs to be done. And whether they recognize it or not, I think they should, you need to be paid. Your people need to be paid. And you do that some of it with labor, but a big chunk of it is with the margin you charge on parts. So anyway, get the margins right. You'll get your bottom line right. And play around with it. You might have some fun. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Murray, again. Always great to talk to you. And again, recommend people go to the video version of this if you haven't, because that margin and pricing matrix is super interesting. Great information there. We will put a note to email Murray for the updated numbers on that in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe or follow, whatever it is the platform tells you to do. And that's all for me and Murray. And
see you, everybody.
School's out. I don't know. School's in. School's always in. All right. Take care, everyone. Hannah, take us away.
You're listening to the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast, brought to you by the publishers of Indie Garage and Jobber Nation. Connect with us online at indiegarage.ca and jobbernation.ca, a brand of Chat Integrated Media.